Next up, we got an audio submission from an amazing person. Here, let's jump to that right now.
Hey, Bandrew, this is Ben in North Carolina, longtime follower. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm a tiny bit raspy, but I think I can get through this. Thanks for taking my question. Have you ever noticed how many different kinds of good, and I use good in quotes here, how many different kinds of good voice production styles there are? I mean, I'm sure we all have, but it's kind of fun to take a diverse inventory of it, of all these different voice production styles that are considered good. You know, sometimes I think on it, and I think it's a bit rattling sometimes when you listen to podcasts back to back that have totally different approaches to recording and mixing voice. So one podcast might have big, fat, punchy consonants, and then the next one might have that real thin, flat Neumann U87 sound that they have at NPR. Then you've got that real bass heavy, that real low-end heavy, broadcasty kind of FM radio station sound. Then you've got that smooth proximity warmth that I associate with people like Roman Mars. And then you've got Jesse Thorne with Bullseye and that real just simple clarity that he has. And then on to the 40 kilobits per second of Mark Maron. Then you got voice recordings where it sounds like they've scooped out all the mids. And then you've got production that embraces the mids. And sometimes I even like that really just that totally unprocessed, straight out of the microphone sound, just to appreciate its raw qualities. But anyway, we can listen to episodes of Bandrew Says and, we can draw our own conclusions about your production preferences and what you think sounds good. But what would you say are the features of a great voice recording? Again, we have all these different standards of good, the thin NPR sound, the big fat FM radio station sound, whatever they're playing on Gimlet. What would you say are the features of a great voice recording? And conversely, are there any voice production styles out there, like accepted voice production styles, that you simply can't stand? And why? Thanks, Bandrew. I know you work hard on this stuff, and I always appreciate the work you do. Signed, Ben.
Ben, my God, good vocal production qualities. See, your recording that you just sent in. That sounds incredible. I love how your recording sounds. It sounds amazing for your voice. And if anybody doesn't know, Ben is the host of the Tourette's podcast, and it is an absolutely amazing listen. An amazing show, and I love it so much because it teaches me stuff about Tourette's that I didn't know, and it works to destigmatize Tourette's. If you are interested in learning about that, check it out. It is an incredible show, and he always sounds incredible. You can find it tourettespodcast.libsyn.com. 100% recommend it. Keep up the great work there, Ben. Let's jump to your question. These are amazing questions. What are the features of a great voice recording? I know this may come as a surprise to some people given what I focus on, where I am a microphone and audio channel, but I am surprisingly very forgiving when it comes to audio. There are few things that will make me shut off a show, and all of them are very easily avoidable. Of course, there are going to be different answers that I could give depending on the medium that the audio is going to or the goals that the recording has. So I am just going to focus on podcast audio because that's really where I focus. The features that I think are required for a great voice recording are there needs to be good clarity, the level needs to be consistent, processing needs to be subtle, and it needs to be easy to listen to. So let's go ahead and dive a little bit more into each of these topics. First, it needs to have good clarity, meaning it's very easy to understand what is being said because podcasts exist to convey information. If people are not able to understand what you're saying, why are you even recording a podcast? That is 100% essential. And this could be affected by multiple things: mic selection, mic technique, and mic placement, pronunciation, and all of the processing you do. And we'll talk more about processing right now. Second, the level needs to be consistent. You should not have your audience reaching for their volume dial or their volume rocker constantly to increase and decrease the volume to make your podcast listenable. This is really difficult for somebody to diagnose on a single person podcast that's being listened to in a quiet room. If I were to listen to a single person podcast in my studio here, it would be hard for me to say, well, you know what? I'm turning up and down the volume a lot because I wouldn't need to. But the moment that you start listening to a show in a loud environment, whether it be a car or whether it be the gym, you notice it immediately. Or if you're listening to a multiple person podcast, that becomes very apparent as well, because every single time a different person starts talking, if they're at different levels, you'll be increasing or decreasing the volume. Not only will that ruin the recording, in my opinion, but it will give your audience the worst experience and make them not want to listen again, because now they have a task. They have to ride the volume fader the entire time they're listening. Podcasts are great because you turn them on, you put in your earbuds, you put your phone in your pocket, and you get going. That would ruin a recording, in my opinion. Third, the processing needs to be subtle. There are, of course, different schools of thought here, because radio-style production is as far from subtle as you can get, but people love it, probably because they are used to it. I personally prefer the more subtle processing. First, if I can hear the gate opening and closing, whether it be chopping off the beginning and the ends of your words, or when it opens up, I hear all the fan noise going on in your room, that makes for an awful sounding recording, because it is distracting from what you're trying to say. You need to have a very subtle gate and very subtle noise removal. Noise removal is a very dangerous plugin to use, because you can destroy the sound very easily by just turning it up a tiny bit too much. You start to sound underwater and it sounds awful. 2, compression. This is a touchy subject, a controversial topic as well. It's difficult to tackle. I personally prefer the more subtle compression, which can be achieved by multiple compressors being run in series, so no one compressor is doing heavy lifting. Each one is just doing a little bit, taking off a couple of decibels here, a couple decibels here, and a couple decibels here. That's the best way to get the natural compression. Now, I will admit that on this show, I have started to get a much more compressed sound. That's because I do this video component to the show, meaning I have to be entertaining on video. And if I were to sit with very good microphone technique and not move off axis the entire time, yes, I would be getting better audio, more consistent audio, and I would be able to be a little bit more subtle with my compression. But that is horrifyingly boring to watch. So I go ahead and sacrifice the audio a little bit to make it a little bit more entertaining, which is a bummer, but given the road that I have gone down, it's a cross that I have to bear, and I gladly go ahead and bear that cross, and I compensate for those fluctuations and moving off axis a bit with more aggressive compression, unfortunately. 3, EQ is slightly more to taste, but my approach is not to change the tonal characteristics of a microphone too much. There are some people who know exactly how they want the final product to sound, and they will EQ any microphone that they use to sound a certain way and get that final product the way that they want it to sound. My approach is I am using a microphone to get this microphone's tone and this microphone's qualities and characteristics. Therefore, I am not going to make massive changes to change the tonal sound of a microphone. I am going to make minor reductive or additive EQ to fix minor issues with the microphone on my voice, whether it be nasaliness, whether it be harshness, whether it be boxiness or boominess or anything. I do EQ to repair the sound rather than change the sound. That's my approach to it. I don't think this necessarily will make or break a vocal recording though. It's just my personal approach to equalization. And finally, for reverb, I am okay with a little bit of room sound getting into a recording. I don't think that ruins a recording. Of course, depends on the final product you're going for. But I think we've all heard the classic omnidirectional microphone in the middle of a table between 4 people. And that is one of the rare instances where I will just shut off a show. I cannot listen to that. It drives me insane and I hate it. It's a very easy solution. Just fix it. Fix it. You freaks, fix it. And the final topic that I wanted to talk about was the show just needs to be easy to listen to. As I said in one of my recent reviews, I believe it was the HyperX Quadcast, it's unoffensive. I think unoffensive audio for podcasting is great because the most amount of people will be able to enjoy it. And I think my above critiques or criteria rather for a good audio recording for voice will all lead to a very easy to listen to recording. Nobody should hear a recording and think, oh my God, what is going on? This is insane. It's so compressed. There's so much reverb. It sounds so bad. I can't listen to this. People need to say, hey, that sounds pretty good. They need to pull in iDubbbz. Pretty good. There are obviously going to be different schools of thought on production based on the anticipated location of playback. So that's why I think multiple production styles are okay. This is just my personal taste and my personal preference. Then you had the question, are there any voice production styles out there that I cannot stand? Again, I am going to reiterate this again. This is my personal preference. I cannot stand the FM radio style super compressed and super limited sound. I think that is so incredibly unnatural, not necessarily painful, but just awful to listen to. I understand why it's done. Because people listen in cars, and I am sure there are some kind of regulations in terms of output levels and maybe technical limitations going through the radio waves of levels that you have to hit. But it's just too jarring for me. Not only does it not sound good to me, but it also gives me this feeling like it's fake, like the host is putting on a character and not being honest. I know this sounds a little bit insane, but it's like the stereotype of a used car salesman. Used car salesmen have this very standard, stereotypical voice. Hey, how you doing over there, bud? You want to buy a car? And when I hear that type of radio production, I get the same feeling. That's not that real person. That person, that's not them. They are somebody else. This is a character that they are playing. And when I listen to podcasts and voice recordings, I prefer to hear the real person, the real person's voice, and how they actually are if I was sitting in the room with them. That's my take on the FM radio broadcast. I can't stand it. It's jarring, unnatural, and fake to me. The other seemingly accepted style, I put that in air quotes, that I can't stand is overboosted low end or trying to alter your voice to fit a widely accepted tone. It seems that some people think a 6 decibel low shelf at 120 hertz makes them sound manlier. I am a man now. I am all that is man. No. It doesn't. It makes you sound insecure. It makes you sound boomy and awful. It does not make you sound like a big manly man. It's obvious what you're doing. You're tricking nobody. You're tricking nobody. Don't think you're getting away with it. And when I hear this type of production, I automatically think that the host is not being their true self. Again, being authentic really comes across, and it's really important in my production requirements or my ideal audio production, clearly. I think that people need to just accept their voice and not try to alter it to fit into some idea of what you think a podcaster or a radio host should sound like. I think that is ridiculous. The thing I could equate this to is famous singers. Let me go ahead and try this. When you hear a famous singer, who do you think they sound like? You think they sound like themselves. But when somebody comes out with a unique vocal style, how many times do you hear somebody trying to emulate that? When you hear that person emulating them, that copycat, 5 years down the road, how frequently do you remember that person who was trying to copy Taylor Swift or I don't know, other singers? Probably very infrequently. I simply think that people should accept their own voice because unique voices are amazing. Unique voices tell people, hey, this is me. This is how I sound. And I have a unique voice. When somebody hears you talking on a radio or on another show, they may say, hey, I know that's Bandrew. Hey, I know that's Ben. And that is amazing. You may not have the bassiest voice like me. You may not sound like Mike Delgadio. That's fine. It's fine. Accept your voice. Let it be what it is. You don't need to become some radio broadcast super bassy, super compressed, super limited sound. Be yourself, both in terms of how you're recording your voice and how you're processing it, but also in how you're conveying your content and the information you want to get across. Be your authentic self rather than trying to emulate somebody else. You dopes. Okay. There I go. I'm emulating Bill Burr by saying dopes. Do as I say, not as I do. Ben, I hope I sufficiently answered your question. And to reiterate, I think your audio is some of the best that I have heard. I love how it sounds. It's just so easy to listen to and so smooth. And I am going to drop a drama bomb for everybody. Guess what microphone he's using, if I remember correctly? The Electro Voice RE20. Look out, Larco, RE20. I'm not saying I like it better than the SM7B, though. It's a good alternative. I'll say that. Ben, thank you so much for the amazing audio question and the audio submission. You are a legend. Again, Tourette'sPodcast.libsyn.com. Check it out.